Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of The Bear. Great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I love the title card being like, oh, it's not The Bear Season 2, it's The Bear Part 2. So I wonder, I was about to say that would be any other show, but I'm curious, is this one of those shows where they technically have it mapped out of like how much, like they don't know the finer details, but overarching they know what they want the story to be, you know, all across the board, and do they already have an idea of how many seasons they want? The fact is specifically calling it Part 2, but I mean, I guess it makes sense. It's like, yeah, that was kind of like the rough patch era, which I guess you can still call this the rough patch era, because we're picking up maybe like a few days after the season 1 finale. They're still in a process like, all right, we're figuring stuff out, because they've got Natalie there kind of being kind of in a managerial position of kind of like she's the one kind of planning a lot of stuff out. Granted, she hasn't officially taken the job, but Sid's kind of pushing on her to be the one to kind of plan stuff out, because they're trying to figure out, right, they're taking stuff out and they're trying to remodel the place, but it's like, yeah, we're remodeling, we're not gutting it, but fact is like, nah, man, we're gonna have to pretty much like remodel and like end up gutting this place, because it's like, all right, so what about this, and I love Carmen's like, all right, so tell me what's wrong, and we're gonna figure it out, and he's trying to come up with the totals, and I love that every time he's bringing up the totals, he's forgetting about at least $10,000 off of it, and so at one point he's like, it's 80, and she's like 90, he's like, okay, and then he's like 80, and so we're up to 85,000, just kidding, turns to Sydney, 95,000, right? And it's like, yeah. And it's like, how accurate are your numbers? He's like, yeah, I feel pretty confident I'm accurate about at least some of the stuff on this list, and not entirely. But it's like, yeah, they got to replace the fryer. It's like, oh, we could get a cheap fryer. It's like, yeah, that'd be 10 grand and another 10 grand to get an actual good fryer. So it's like, this place has just been so hodgepodge until now. So it's like, they really get what they need. They're going to have to really fork over some dough. And even with the pans, they have to try and salvage what they can from the pans. I love that Sydney is like, oh yeah, let's kind of science this bit, and has Tina kind of go about trying to clean the pans, which it turns out it ended up working out in the end. So, but Tina brings up a good point, like, cool, Carmi's going to be the executive chef. You're basically the new Carmi. We're going to need a new Sydney. So we're probably going to have to hire someone to be your replacement. But I do love later on, like the moment that got brought up, I was like, well, what about Tina? And later on, Sid goes to Tina. It's like, right, I want you to be kind of my Jeff or whatever. And Tina's so excited because last season, like Tina kicked in it. Like it was about halfway through the season where Tina was like, wait, I'm actually good at this. And she started feeling good, like for the first time in a long time. Like who knows if she was always like that, but then under Mikey, you know, like she just kind of stalled out, or whether it's just a situation of just maybe in life. And I think it's that thing of, right, when you're in life, you might not find that thing you're good at, and then when you find it, you're like, oh, I'm gonna stick with this. It feels good to actually be good at something. Because I think that's kind of an interesting contrast with Richie, because everyone else is on board with all the stuff that's happening, which Richie's like, yeah, I'm trying to be on board too, but the problem is I'm a guy without a purpose. I don't really have the skills. You're having fun with this, which Carmi's like, I'm not. Like, this is what I'm doing. I love it, but I'm not having fun with it, because he's reading a book currently where he's saying like, hey, this guy has a group of friends. They all excel at stuff, and basically he's alone for the ride until they drop him, and that's what he's scared about, being dropped by this group, because they're the only people he has. We know his personal life, his family life is kind of screwed up. Things with his ex and his daughter. I'm sure she never found out about him getting locked up, despite his like leaving that voicemail or whatever. I'm sure that I don't know, she read between the lines in that whole situation, because he avoided talking about the fact is, yeah, I'm kind of locked up, and that's why I'm calling you and leaving you in this message. But either way, yeah, I don't think he talked to her, right? It's been a little while since I saw the season finale. I want to say he left the message. I don't think he was actually talking to her. Or was he actually talking to her? I don't remember. Either way, he avoided the topic of what his circumstances were at that time. Because he was locked, he was in holding, and he was in, you know, and he could have gone away for a very long time if the guy didn't wake up. But luckily, the guy did wake up from the fight and everything, so. But I also think that kind of fits with Richie's circumstances because Richie was always kind of the more reluctant to kind of jump on board. Like, Tina was too, but eventually her and literally everyone else was in this well-oiled machine except for Richie. He continued to be the outlier, but it's because, like, right, he didn't have a place here anymore. At least the way things were before. It's like, oh, I'm the guy that sits back, tells stories and stuff like that and kind of like screw around. That worked under Mikey, but once again, the equilibrium of that whole thing doesn't work when Mikey's not there. Like, everything shifted and changed. The whole point was to try to keep the place as much as, because it was like keeping Mikey alive, but now that he's going, it's like we all kind of have to move forward with the, like, fully accept that he's gone and we can't just hold on to that forever, you know, especially with the plans they have, so. But Carmen trying to, like, tell Richie, is like, hey, I'm not going to drop you. But you feel like that might be a little foreshadowing. But I guess it's like, right, despite everything we've been through, I haven't dropped you till now. Like, that's not going to change in the future. But it's just, it's part of, like, Richie's growth, even to the point that he's like, right, I don't say the G word or the R word anymore because I'm trying to better myself as a person, which I love Sydney's like, well, you just said them just then when you were trying to give an example of how you're not saying those words anymore, because he referred to something as Jewish lightning. There's a hole in the wall, and basically they put, like, a poster or whatever in front of it, which I was like, how very, like, a Shawshank Redemption of you. But it's like, oh, Jewish lightning. It's like, no, you can't say that. And it's like, well, what's the story behind it? Turns out one day when Mikey was high, he was planning on burning the restaurant down for the insurance money. So it's like, cool. That's even more reason why we should never use that phrasing ever again. You know, because Richie didn't see any problem with it, because he's like, yeah, that's what. Because I was like, it's the because that has like a larger, like, effed up racist connotation to it. Because I was like, that's what I was just thinking. I was like, where's the Jewish lightning come into play? And I was like, oh, is that supposed to be like some like anti-Semitic shit about like how Jewish people are schemers when it comes to money and shit? Is that what that's the only, like, putting myself in the mindset of a racist, that's the only way I could, like, I guess that's how a racist would justify that naming. I was like, where the fuck do you even get that name from, Richie? Jewish lightning? What the fuck is that? Like, where'd you, like, is that an actual term? I'm curious about. Holy shit, I just looked it up. I also made sure to put that in incognito mode. I mean, not like that really means anything, but still. Holy shit, that's a real term. That's a real hateful term. And obviously I love, because I did Google it, one of the articles below it was in reference to the bear, because I'm sure everyone else was like, is that a term? Apparently it's a term specifically for this situation of burning down for insurance money. It's specific. That's why I was like I said, getting in the mindset, like, considering the name and everything, I figured it had to be like because you stress the point of calling it Jewish lightning. It has to, like, I knew there had to be a racist connotation to it, but it's like, I figured that was a context for it. I didn't realize it was going to be a legitimate hateful term in real life, like a real term that existed. That's super fucked. But what I also, circling away from that, what I love is that they ultimately end up having to, you know, they need more money to fix this whole situation, to make this all possible. And so, who do they turn to? Jimmy. But at the same time that's happening, like, an alarm is going off. Apparently, Mikey had put, like, some alarm system in, like, I forgot where Richie was. Richie was kind of like going through something, and he was like, yeah, I didn't know Mike was going to put like freaking alarm system here. And so they have to like turn it off. But I love that it's Sydney and Natalie have earplugs in, but Carmen doesn't. And Jimmy's like, isn't this driving you insane? He's like, no, I know. He's like, well, lucky for you. I think it makes sense because Carmen has probably always got stuff in his head, and it's nice to have noise to help drown it out. I even love that he was like, wait, is that all in my head? And then Natalie was talking about the noise. He's like, oh, okay, never mind. It's not just in my head. But yeah, I was actually surprised when he's super upfront with Jimmy about everything. He's like, honestly, we found your money. Like, he didn't put it in a bank. Also, we're not giving it to you. We're going to keep that $300,000 and we're going to ask you for $500,000 more. And it's like, why would I do that? And it's like, you know, Carmen's like, right, give us 18 months. And after 18 months, this whole thing, it's yours. You can take this property and all of this and do what you want with it. The fact of the matter is you're going to be sinking 800,000 into this place. But if you sell it, he's like, you'll get like 5,000. He's like, I'll get 2,000 at best. And I love that Natalie and Sydney are just like, your math is god awful. Just, it's like, yeah, you keep being super off. I mean, at least I think that in retrospect makes me think when Natalie Natalie was like, "No, you were a little bit close." How she kept going like, "Oh, you were almost kind of sort of close," makes me think that was her being extremely facetious and just kind of exaggerating, because it's like, no, you were super fucking far off, bro. But it's like, yeah, you're god awful with these calculations and stuff like that. And the whole thing is about making Jimmy a partner too, because they want to, Mike wanted to franchise this place, but it never really had. I guess that's what the 300 grand really was about. It's about kind of the seeds to franchise this place, because he was probably taking a gamble like, right, I franchise this place out, I'll be able to do much more and give back, but probably like, with everything Mike was going through, like, and all that his substance abuse, it probably didn't really. I mean, who knows? He probably still would have ran that 300 grand into the ground. I mean, now they're like asking for 500 grand more. So maybe this will work out. But when Natalie kind of plans everything out, the earliest they could open with everything they need to do, all the reps they have to go through and stuff like that, as Sydney kind of put, it's like, right, we have to go through a rep who signs off on another rep who signs off on another rep. So it's like there's many reps that have to get involved. But it's like, other than that, it's like, it's with everything going on and what they need to get this place started, they need 6 months to get started. So it's like, cool. And even then, it's like, didn't she say it'd be like 8 months before they'd see profits? I think 8 months after that before they even saw profits. So that's already 14 of the 18 months, meaning they'd only have 4 more months to return what they owe to Jimmy if this place isn't a success. So it's like, no, we have to start immediately. So we have to start rolling out immediately so we can start making money now so that we can hit that 18-month deadline. So, well, Carmen, you don't want to like pigeonhole us in this situation, but for him, it's like that was the only way he could probably get Jimmy to fully sign off on this, like, by making it worth his while, that it puts a limit on it. Because it's like, right, Mikey already kind of screwed you out of the 300 grand. I mean, to be fair, it's actually a little less than 300 grand because they didn't bring it up, but Carmen did work off a little bit of that debt last season. Wasn't much, but he knocked a tiny bit. The like smallest percentage, I'd probably say like maybe like 1% of like the debt he like chipped away at or something like that because of that birthday party last season. So we also have Marcus's circumstances. I believe it's his mom. She's I don't know if she was already like that, because I don't remember that coming up last season about his mom, but it's like he had to step in and it's like, yeah, the nurse is going to be there the next day, which is obviously that whole scene you're just kind of like, haven't been in that exact circumstance, but it felt a little too close to home, especially recently. So it just kind of was like, I don't know. It's one of those moments where it's like, yeah, real life kind of bleeds into like a show you're watching. And you're like, that's a little too real, and I don't want to think about that. TV shows are supposed to be a little escapism, but obviously when it's something grounded like this, of course, real life is going to bleed over. But it seems like he's got that to kind of deal with everything that's going on at work, too. So just a little bit of the Marcus stuff this episode. I'm sure we'll kind of expand upon that more and more throughout the season of his journey and how things kind of play out. So there was something about, Sydney had brought up something about, like, there's a thing that E-Rap has to go through again that he has to get renewed. There was a moment in the episode where he was twisting his hand like his hand had hurt. Because I think it was Gary being like, yo, I wish I could get some help because his sign is super heavy, but now I'll do it myself. But then it falls, and he was like, honestly, that was a lot easier than I expected. But E-Rap was like holding his hand and kind of twisting out like maybe he might have like a little bit of a carpal tunnel thing going on or something. Or I don't know, but I was like, I wonder, is that going to play a role in that thing? Because Sydney was like, yeah, like he needs to kind of get his license or whatever thing like renewed or whatever. Because everyone else is up to date and fine except for him and Richie. But Richie, because, well, Richie's Richie. So he was never kind of like, like I said, I don't remember what the thing was for that you had to be certified for. But like Richie never was, because Richie's Richie. And he kind of avoids, I guess, all like paperwork and responsibilities, kind of what I guess that's supposed to be getting at. So. But basically, everyone kind of splits for the night and kind of goes their separate ways. It almost felt like Sid and Carmen were like, because Carmen's like, are we really going to just not do anything, really go home early? And Sid's like, not much we can do until this place actually gets open. And it's like, yeah. But like, you can tell like Carmen's not big in the idle hand situation, and neither is Sydney. Like, they're both kind of like, it kind of sucks. We just have to sit here and wait. But it almost seemed like Carmen was almost suggesting like, oh, do you want to like hang out or something? But I guess it felt weird because they've never really hung out outside of work, so it's kind of like, let's kind of keep those boundaries. So it's like, okay, just bye. So he's home, and it's just like, he's sitting there, and I think he's looking at his old coat from like the restaurant he was working at like a year ago. I guess that was it, because Sydney had made this whole point about a star, but like, I think Carmen's like, it's, for one, it's like the time we would need to go after a star isn't worth it. Like, but he's kind of like, eventually he's like, fine, you can go for the star while we're trying to, like, it just better not interfere with what we're doing, like, and better work in conjunction with what we're trying to do. Because she wants to give them, like, I guess, when they say a star, I can only assume they're, especially in the restaurant world, I could only assume they're referencing like a Michelin star. And she's like, oh, you already have one. But he was like, no, I don't have one. I retained it. And it's like, yeah, she's like, yeah, but it's basically like the cousin of having one. So I guess it's a thing of maybe the place he was working previously, he got the place one, but it's like, it's not really mine. It's retained. Like, yeah, I kind of got some ownership on it in that regard, but it's not like I get to carry it with me. It stays at the restaurant I got the Michelin star for. So it's like, it's not one of those work things that like, oh, you're a Michelin star chef, and it's like, you got a Michelin star, you get to carry that over to this other restaurant that he's currently working at beef. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. It seems like that's kind of what he was saying, especially because he's like, yeah, I didn't receive it, I retained it. He kept using that wording specifically. But yeah, just staring at his coat and just kind of like, once again, idle hands. Carmen's not the type to just sit still anyway. So goes back to beef, and he's like, yo, and Natalie and Sid are there like at work. They're like, yo, we got it. 6 months is too long. So they're mapping everything out, and it's like, cool. Is this a terrible idea? Natalie and Carmen don't really say anything. They just kind of look at her, and she's like, yeah, I thought it's cool. Yeah, I thought so. Just wanted to make sure, because it's like, yeah, we are going to run ourselves into the ground. This is going to be a hot mess. So it's definitely going to be ultimately interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good